also a teacher, so I've been a literature professor before I joined PhD, and I like to do things old school on the board. What we are going to do here in this workshop is that we are going to first, of course, it's a creative process, and we don't want to formalize a creative process, otherwise we'll end up writing the same stuff. But I also want to introduce some aspects of form so that it becomes logically coherent, that what we are going to do. In today's workshop, what I want all of us to attempt is something called spatialization. And it is to conjure different spaces out of a single place. Now, just to give a very easy example, right now, even if Ravi is a full-time faculty at this university, I hold more power than him because it is my workshop. I am the conductor, right? So, and you guys who have come here for the attendance, you have literally no power at all. And people who have come here for the workshop, you are here because you hope to take something back, right? So, I perceive this place in a very different way, where I am a communicator, I have certain ideas that I want to share. You guys might perceive this way in a very different way than I do, and similarly you guys also might perceive this place in a different way. Now, in this differing of perception, what we are doing is that we are living in a place, and all our lived experience is creating particular space for us. So, in short, space is a lived place, right? A lived experienced place. And because our experiences are not going to be the same, because we are different people caught up in different contexts, and therefore, right at the very beginning, by this example, we are all inhabiting different spaces, right? This is clear? Okay. Now, I transition from poetry to non-fiction. And this is not to say that when I was writing tales, then poetry was completely absent. It is a poetic book. Many reviewers have noted that. So there is a combination which has been attempted in the book, which you feel free to introduce in your own writing, is to perhaps look at forms through a very fluid structure. So what I mean to say is that in order to be poetic, you don't have to write poems, right? And in order to be prosaic, you don't actually have to write prose. There can be prosaic poems and there can be poetic prose, right? Now, creative nonfiction is a very interesting form of writing. And it is perhaps something that we are introduced at the very beginning, the way we speak, the way we communicate, right? You and your friend might be gossiping about some other friend. That is creative nonfiction. To add masala and tadka and to make it entertaining, engaging, right? You might be recounting your experience of traveling to Himachal or some cool place in front of your friends. That is also creative nonfiction. The captions you write on your Instagram post, very much creative nonfiction, right? Creative nonfiction is not simply that there is a hefty book that you have to read, but it informs the very fact and the basis of how we present ourselves to the world. It is very much centered on what we say, our subjectivity, how we apprehend, how we interact with the world outside, and how we communicate that interaction to people close to us. Now, first subject is clear, that it is we, right, which is here in point B, that we are the subjects who are interacting with what is in front of us. Now, what is in front of us is then another kind of subject, which is A, right? Now, since we are concerned with spatialization, what we interact with is a place. So there is the subject of the place and there is the subject of the person who is interacting. One warning, it is very easy to turn either of these two subjects into objects, right? So we should not do that. We need to maintain subjectivity of both. So if I am writing about a place, I should write that place in such a way that it does not turn into a commodity. It retains its character, right? And how we are going to retain its character? It is by something which we call dwelling or inhabiting, right? And not consuming. I'll give you one example. Quite recently, I went to Jodhpur and I was giving a similar talk there. And I had very little time. So I had only 10, 12 hours. And it was IIT Jodhpur campus, quite far away from the city, just like this university is far away from the city. And so I couldn't go to the proper city. But the place where I was put up in the hotel, it was midway between the city and the campus. So it was called Mandor. And there was this very interesting garden called Mandor Garden. So I went there very much aware that I don't have time to dwell. Like I can't put myself in that meditative position where I observe everything or reflect on everything that I am seeing. So I went there as a tourist. I went there as a consumer of a tourist place, right? Now if I were to write a creative non-fiction piece on that experience, what I think will be produced is my subjectivity, but not the place's subjectivity. Then the place would turn into an object. But when I was writing this book, so Tales of Hazaribagh is a book which has taken 5 years. So 5 years of dwelling, even though I was born in Hazaribagh, so I have known that place forever. But still those 5 years were very critical because that was the process, the time of intense engagement, personal engagement. And what such engagement returned to us is a very reformed kind of subjectivity. It reforms us as well. So both these subjects have the capacity to inform the other. One more very simple example. Nature is mute, right? And yet when we post on Instagram, we say mountains are calling. So mountains don't call us, right? It's a kind of agency that we give to the mountain. And if you look at it, then mountains call us only in summers, right? So for monsoon and winters, mountains are chill. They don't call us. And if you want to do a hardcore winter trek, then perhaps mountains might call you, but in the landslide season, they won't, right? They won't because we'll die. So whatever values or meanings that we attach to the places around us, it still emerges from our own individual or collective subjectivity. And it is very much important, therefore, that we also investigate our own position, right? Why do we perceive a place in a specific way? If this place is a happy space for me, why is it so? Is it because I have made it as a writer and here are a bunch of people listening to what I have to say? Does that make me happy? It could be multiple things, multiple reasons. The very fact that I am here at Alliance or perhaps not at Christ, right? So what does it say about me? Does it have to do anything with what Ravi initially said, that our friendship, that it was incidental? Okay. So it was incidental, but he knew me and therefore he extended the invitation, right? And here I am, Asia Pacific Writers and Translator accepted, and then here I am. So there are reasons, right? The way we come to be, the way we perceive certain things, and the way we act. There's a huge baggage. Some of it can be psychological, some of it can be contextual. When I say contextual, it can mean our own position in the society. Some of us might have money, so we might go to specific kinds of restaurants, right? Some of us may not have such kind of money, so perhaps we will not go to Taj Vivanta or those kind of places, right? So accessibility itself, that to what extent are you accessing a place, right? That itself becomes a very fraught question. So keep all of these things in mind when you attempt the exercise that I have put forward in front of you. It's a very basic exercise. I haven't done anything grand or overarching. It's a very basic exercise which is designed to first test your perceptive ability, your inhabiting ability, test you in terms of your discomfort also, in order to reconcile yourself with that part which you perhaps don't want to acknowledge. And after we have done these things, I will stop, this workshop will stop, and you will take home this third part of your question paper, the workbook, right? And you will write 500 words, 1000 words, whatever you want to. And if you feel, you can send it to me. And I will read and I will offer some comments, right? I might take time, but I will do it. So the very first component, let's begin. You have two photos in front of you. The first photo is a very urban photo. And the second photo is a very typical pastoral photo. So in the first panel, you have a city with skyscrapers and everything. Glittering city. It's a night scene. There are brand names, swiftly passing by cars, very neat road, right? And in the second image, you have pretty much the opposite of what the first image invokes. The second image is that of leisure. There are people who are just sitting, perhaps talking to each other. There is livestock. There's very nice hill. There's no neatness here, because everything is overgrown. There's wilderness here, right? So these are completely opposite images, completely opposite places. First is city, the other is pastoral. Now, think and decide that which of these two places appeal to you the most, which of these two places you would like to inhabit and not consume, right? And write down your reasons in at least 3 points or at most 5 points. You can go even further if you have multiple points. But think about it, that why do you want this place? Why do you want to be in this place? Now, just to give you 2 pointers. You may want to occupy either the city or the pastoral momentarily, like at this point in time, I feel like being in the city. Or you can occupy either the city or the pastoral for eternity by saying that I am a city guy, so I like the city. Or I am a pastoral guy, so I like pastoral, so I would inhabit that, right? So you can either look into your own psyche and listen to what you desire at this moment in time or what you have always desired, right? So begin. You have 10-15 minutes. Write down your reasons, 3 to 5 reasons. Activities that you might do here. Might carry consequences. So if you are modifying certain things that are given to you, if you are thinking of building a skyscraper in the pastoral scene, then just take into consideration what such modifications might entail, right? You don't have to write these things down, but just keep thinking. So dwelling is also ethical. So while you are dwelling in a place, do it ethically. Just be mindful of how your dwelling is impacting other people. Okay. All right. Now, imagine this. You have all, to whatever extent, whether satisfactorily or unsatisfactorily, depending on how you judge your ability, you have all dwelled in the spaces or the places that you have preferred, right? Now, consider that tomorrow Mihir Vatsa becomes multi-billionaire, okay? And, and he decides to kind of beautify the central pathway that you have into the campus from the main road. And with so much money that I have, I say that every 10 yards or 100 yards, there should be replicas of heritage monuments across the world, right? So you walk 100 yards and you'll be with Statue of Liberty. You walk 100 more yards, you'll be with some other building, the Palace of Versailles, and so on, right? And because I have money, I don't think that there will be so many problems in accomplishing what I desire to do. Now, this is also, it's not merely because I have money, but I feel very sentimental about these places. I want to have all these heritage buildings at one place, right? So this is also a form of dwelling. And it has created a space where I can accommodate all these landmarks in one location, right? But do you agree with my dwelling? That is the question. I am at liberty to dwell and ideate and create multiple spaces. If given the capital, I am at the liberty to also realize those spaces, right? Bring in the bulldozers, bring in the JCBs, start constructing. Yet there might be many of you who will say, Ki, how tacky, right? How unoriginal. This money could have been better spent elsewhere. Maybe some gardens would have been nice. Maybe some fountains would have been nice. Maybe we could have just let it be, favoring wilderness to grow. Maybe no more constructions, just dig out the road also, right? So, so multiple kinds of dwelling can be made possible. And if you think about it, what we call aesthetic sense, and when someone we say that no, they don't have a good aesthetic sense, or ye sarkar ne yahan par aakar how badly they have renovated this statue, how badly they have done that work, it is all a clash of dwellings. Because the administrator, they have dwelled in that space in a certain way, and they have the power to sign and sanction the funds, whereby us poor people, we don't have that power. So we critique or criticize, say, no, this is not good, ye color acha nahi lag raha hai, they shouldn't have done that, they have uprooted those trees, though they were the better trees. Meanwhile, in their minds, they have done something revolutionary, right? So all of these conflicts that we see on a poetic level, they are all conflicts of dwelling, right? So spatialization is at once very personal, but given the agency, it can also become very political. So spaces are no longer innocent. Spaces can be very problematic, right? And this is what brings us to the second part. So now you have apprehended your place. You have decided that I prefer this place. I want to be in this place either right now or forever. And while I want to be in this place, I might make some changes, right? Now, when you're making changes, then the other people might call you tacky, right? Other people might call such changes superfluous or unwanted or unnecessary. Equally, they can praise it. They can say that, yes, it was much needed. Yes, it has made life easier, and multiple things. Now, what I'm trying to arrive at by outlining all of these things is you to investigate yourself. You investigated the places first in the first exercise. Now, turn that critical lens and investigate yourself. You inhabited those places because you preferred them. Now, think, is there something about this place, your place, which can cause you discomfort, which can cause you pain? So if you have chosen the night sky urban place, then is there something that it reminds you of a painful memory, maybe a painful experience, a confusing experience, some fear, anything that cause you or put you at unease. Because it's very easy to be happy all the time in our imagination. But let's get real. These places, even though we dwell in them, they can always trigger certain uncomforts, right? So look into your preferred chosen place and imagine how it can cause you trouble or pain. Think about it. If you have chosen the pastoral, the scenic place, if you fall sick, who is going to come there? Is an ambulance going to come there? I don't think so, right? So that way it can make you uneasy. If you have chosen the urban night scene and you're walking and you're alone because there's no one in that picture, are you safe? Regardless of whichever gender you identify as, are you safe? Is it a 1 a.m. night? Is it a 2 a.m. night? So how safe is that, even though it looks crowded, right? So think of all these things, certain situations, certain triggering memories, and write down at least in 3 points that why you would feel inconvenienced, why you would feel pain or discomfort, okay? So you have 10 more minutes, 10 to 15 more minutes. This will require some thought. Be very honest to yourself, be very sincere, right? What separates fact or what separates fiction from non-fiction is that non-fiction still has allegiance to fact. So whatever you are writing, it should be empirical since you are the one writing it. So think, go deeper into your own personal history and just write down 3 to 5 points that what according to your own biography, what are these instances which can make you or put you at unease. All right? Chop, likho. And you don't have to share these things with me, so you can be very candid. It's not like I'm going to judge you. Peculiar way of behaving in different spaces. In cities, you may feel that time flies. In cities, you can get an Uber at 1 a.m. and go from one place to the other. But in pastoral, time appears to go still, right? It slows things down. So does this slowing of time or the fastness of time, is this compatible with you, or do you think that it might get boring or too rushed sometimes? If it can get boring, then why? What is it that you would otherwise want to do? And if it gets too rushed, then why? What is it that you would like to do in order to make it slow down? So think about these also. To say engaging meaningfully and not merely consuming these places. And this goes specifically for people who have chosen the pastoral scene. What do you think you will do there in order to sustain yourself? Like, are you going to work in the fields? Are you going to herd the cattle? Who is going to give you food? How are you going to source your basic necessities? And as long as there are city people, then how are you going to source the capital in order to sustain in the city? Where is that money coming from? So think about these things. Do you look at this Dior building as a site of aspiration that one day I will also enter this building and buy Dior clothes? or do you actually have that much capital to immediately walk into the building and buy them, right? So think of your own positionality in terms of economics, that what kind of money or capital or privilege do you have, what kind of money, capital slash privilege you don't have. Is the space that you are creating an aspirational space? Is the space you are creating a depressing space, a happy space? What kind of space? Ravi, let's go for a break. Take attendance. So we can continue, right? Okay. Yeah, we'll come to that. Now the final part. I have asked you to evaluate yourself against privilege and positions, right? The last thing that I want you to do is to basically look at your own psychology, that why are you responding to this particular place? What makes you, do you want to run away from somewhere and come to a city or the pastoral? Do you want to seek something in either of these two places? Do you want to reconcile certain discomforts that we have talked about previously? What makes you feel affectionate or having some sort of affinity, whether utopian affinity or dystopian affinity towards either of these two places? And again, this could be momentarily. So right now मुझे अच्छा नहीं लग रहा है तो मुझे यहाँ जाना है, or this could be in a more prolonged way, that I feel like I belong here. So if you feel like you belong here, then what are the psychological factors behind that? So think these hard questions, put these hard questions to yourself. Yes. So what makes you tick? Basically, that's what I am asking all of you to do. That if there is people say that let's go to the hills. So why go to the hills? What are in the hills? It's a rugged terrain, right? It's very cold. So you'll go to the hill, you'll trek, which you wouldn't normally do in the city. And then you'll put on layers and layers of blanket in order to avoid cold, for which you actually came to the hill. But why does hill make you tick? That's the question. Why do we go to beaches? Why do we go to shopping malls? For a core example, let me give it to you. We go to tourist places, right? Landscape sites. And often what we do when we take photos, even though there are a bunch of people around, we frame the photo in such a way that it's just me and the river. It's just me and the pond. It's just me and the hill, me and the ocean, me and the sun, right? Why do we want to make these things invisible? Like, what is it that is driving us to connect more intimately or privately with what we call nature, what we call city, what we call whatever kind of place that is, right? So think about it. If it doesn't come to you yet, it's fine, but continue to think about it later also. So, does it make sense? Yes. Right. What if you?
It's like you gave the example of going to a hill station, and when we wear clothes because we're feeling very cold. What if the thing that we're going for is actually to wear that, to actually feel the cold and actually feel the warmth at the same time?
Yes.
What if we do that? If we can't find a text, for example, I also took this. I took the cityscape. And when I look into myself, I feel like I'll be very depressed there. Okay, I'll feel like I'm sad. I'm imagining myself alone there, but assuming that I have the capital and everything to sustain myself right there. But then there is this wistful feeling that comes about, and then you are like you are feeling like you are longing for something. You have everything. You're longing for something, and you like that longing. If you like that tick,
If
then
you like
how
that
do-
longing,
Yeah.
then it's
The thing is,
it's for us
if
to
you
like whatever we want to. But if that is what driving you to the cityscape, right?
but I call that peace.
That longing you call peace.
Yes.
Okay, so what I understand what you're trying to tell me, that there is a specific kind of peace that you derive from longing.
Yes.
But peace and longing are very heavy concepts in themselves. So when you're collapsing these two terms into a single space, maybe it will require a bit more of creative thought. And you don't have to do it abhi, you don't have to tell it to me right now. But when you go to the final section, the third, when you get down to write, there's something that you may consider, that how peace and longing are kind of coming into one, or whether peace and longing, because given their heavy connotations on both sides, can they also create conflict? And I'm sure that they do. You might find some peace at some point of time, being alone in the crowd, in the cityscape, and yet moments later you might think, if only I had my partner with me, if only I had someone to share it with. So peace and longing will go together here. But in order to articulate these two things, we have to be very careful, because it's not a therapy session, it's a writing class, right? So we have to be careful with the words that we choose, so that we are always making distinctions, that whether we are coming from the point of peace or whether we are coming from the point of longing. So there's no resolution to what you're saying. If finding peace in longing is what makes you tick and drives you to certain space, then of course it's a very legitimate answer. Now when you get down to write or create that space for you, this is a concept, this should come out in a more fleshed out, creatively articulated way. Okay. Now, yes?
So I have a question. In looking at, do I have to use? Okay. So in looking at the countryside and the city, can we also see it independently? Because for me, even our idea of peace, our idea of happiness is all intertwined and dependent on each other. So like, for example, if you give this exercise to someone in countryside who has never been in the city, it would be a different, while for us who have some idea of what the city means and what countryside means.
So where are you drawing these ideas from? What I'm asking is that you have very nicely said that if I give this exercise to a country dweller who has never been to the city, first, why have they never been to the city? That's the question to ask. What is it? Do they not have the money? Do they not have the support? Do they not have, or do they simply don't want to be in the city? हो सकता है, it might be possible that they simply do not want to go to the city. The other thing is that, but when it comes to us, who are familiar with these two places to certain extents, then it puts into question or perspective the positionality that we were talking about, our own positionality. Now you said that these two could be intertwined, right? Country and the city. Both of them can, of course, they can be. And they are intertwined. So whatever is produced in the country is sent to the city for consumption, which then goes back to the country, the money, right? The tourists who are mostly city dwellers, they go back to country because they have attached certain values to countryside. Those values won't exist if there wasn't at least theoretical distinction, and yet at the same time these distinctions would hold if there wasn't any interaction between these two spaces? Is it too abstract? Am I making sense?
I get your point, but then, like, my question is more like, can we even see it independently? I mean, when I was doing the exercises, what I was feeling like was, okay, I was giving reasons why maybe I like the countryside, but then most of my reasons are intertwined with the idea of the city I have. So it's not more like what the place means for me, but it's a comparison. It's
Yes.
like,
Yes.
yeah, it's like, so the city doesn't give me this sense of peace, so I have to go to the countryside. The
Yes.
city doesn't give me this peace, like happiness, so I have to go to the countryside.
So then you are doing the exercise very successfully, I would
No,
say, because that's the purpose. And of course, on the superficial level, I will give you black and white pictures, but the purpose is to make it complex, and that's what you're doing. So it's fine. So I'm with you on this, that yes, these two ideas are intertwined because one informs the other. So if we look at, if we are city dwellers, then often we feel ki if only we had some time to take the vacation and things would be sorted there. Similarly, for a country dweller who is not a tourist, who is proper dweller, they may actually think that if only I had certain ease of access which city people enjoy, if only I didn't have to labor in the field all day long, if only I had such kind of, yeah.
There is this constant stereotyping of the rural space as well.
Yes.
I don't think that so I don't think this rural space is like always necessarily be a space where you don't have
Agrarian
developments
space.
and
Yes.
all these things that you can access, hospitals or all these things. So this is a kind of stereotype that we have in literature and the popular medias. So I am coming from a rural landscape, so I know it's not the same thing that you see in this thing.
Yes.
Maybe
So-
this is very like, maybe in antiquity, maybe you can see this, but
Yes.
then not now.
Yes. So then it becomes your responsibility to undo that stereotype through writing, right? So, so as writers, we are always fighting stereotypes. We are not here as just, that's what I said, passive consumerism versus active dwelling. So once you start dwelling, then you can call out these stereotypes, right? Ki, no, these are wrong. Even in rural spaces, we do have better roads, we do have connectivity, we do have 4G geo network, right? We do have TikTok, right? So, of course, we will challenge you as writers by throwing stereotypes at you. But if you are perceptive, then you will undo those stereotypes. So when you go to the third section, which will start right now, then it will fall upon you as a writer to ethically dwell as well as debunk stereotypes or make these connections.
But as a writer, like, which position are you supposed to take? For example, if
You are supposed to take your position. You are not supposed to take either city or the country.
Position, I know,
Yes.
but then in expressing, for example, this place, how would you express it as a writer? Like, for us, it's a bit about you. What do you want from this place? But then, for example, if you go to some place and then, as you said, you want to write about that place, and if you want to immerse yourself in that place, what position would you take? Because I think mostly creative things tend to go on like expression of self with the expression of the world, but then like, of course there's no right explanation to it, but then what would be the writer's position for you, at least personally?
So I'm here as a conductor. I'm not here as a writer. You are the writer. Yes.
It's like you have acting from the perspective of either staying in the countryside or choosing the city. And what if we are from not even from the countryside and not even from the city?
Yes.
And we are from the town.
Yes.
And who need both the richness and also peace and happy which we get from the countryside and
Yes.
richness from the city side.
Yes.
And we are in the middle, like a middle class one, who needs the both things. So from their perspective, how could you like differ that?
See, you're asking the wrong person this question. This is the question that you are meant to pose to yourself. You know, because you belong to that middle town space, right? As you yourself said.
Yeah,
So-
then like if like while I'm answering these questions,
Yes.
in when you have asked for the first time to choose either of the position, like either to take the countryside or to take the town space, like the city space, and we are thinking that yeah, we need both of them, either of the qualities are missing in either of them.
Yes, so then articulate it, then write
In the
that.
fears when we describe both of them are the same which we are trying to escape from both of them.
Yes, so then when you go to write your piece, then bring this out. You know, like, what did I say? It's not prescription. We are doing this exercise particularly, like she said, to debunk certain stereotypes, like you said, to complicate ideas, and like she said, to investigate how these two might be interlinked. Of course, I will give you polar opposite ideas, right? But it is up to you whether you adhere to this polarity, whether you adhere to country and city division, or you try to undo it. And I think all of us present here are trying to undo it. We don't think that these two distinctions exist anymore, right? Like she said, maybe in antiquity, but not anymore, right? So,
I have a question.
who? Yes.
Yeah. So I was just thinking, when writers generally, create characters and those characters evolve out of a certain plot, whether it's a character from a rural area or an urban area, the expectations and the behavior and the interaction of that character with its ecosystem is defined. I mean to say, if there is a character from rural area, there is a certain implicit understanding between the reader and the writer that this character will behave in a certain way because he or she is from a rural area. So my whole point is, if we do not fulfill or adhere to that expectation, somewhere we go against the whole character sketching part or storyboarding part, which generally we do. So in that context, do you still think we should be very, very, I would say, pressed for choosing the spaces, or let that take its natural course when we are defining the plot and the characters?
So, first thing, the plot and the character occupy a very central theme in fiction. When we think of non-fiction, specifically in this class, it's all us who are here, right? So we are creating spaces. There's no other character, it's just us, right? So you are dwelling in either the city space or the country space, or a combination of both, whichever space you have created. So the protagonist is you. So when you write your write-up, it's going to be the first person narrative that I did this, I did that. Now, you might in your dwelling meet someone, right? Either from the city space or the pastoral space, and then you might have to describe them. Now, it is up to you how you describe. So if you meet someone who is in the countryside, and it's your imagination. So in your imagination, he might or she might appear wearing a very typical rural attire, or in your imagination, they might be pretty much like you, who have found themselves in the countryside. So their clothes, their mannerism may say that no, they probably do not belong here, or maybe they do, but it's a kind of judgment call that you as a writer will have to make. So when I said that when you are doing modifications in space, right, so there are consequences. Those consequences cannot be answered by me. Those consequences will be answered by you. It is up to you how either to be a conformist to the stereotypes, or whether to be a rebellion to these stereotypes, while keeping in mind that both of them will invite criticism. Of course they will. I may depict a country person in extremely stereotypical country tropes, broken language, unpolished, rustic, right? I may actually create a character or meet a character. Since it's non-fiction, we are not creating characters. We may meet characters who had job in Bangalore, went back home during the pandemic, decided never to return. Now that person will speak in English, even while being in the village, right? So these situations will emerge. Now our attention should be on focalizing that which character are we putting the lens on? Are we ignoring this English speaking villager in favor of the most stereotypical villager, or to debunk the myth of stereotypical countryside, are we privileging this English speaker villager, right? So in that choice, your own prejudice biases and your own position, that where do you align yourself with, either towards regressivism or towards progressivism, that will come out. That does not have to come from me particularly, it has to come from you, right? So let's go to the final section. We have 10-15 minutes, and like I said, you're not going to do the writing here. You're going to do the writing at your home. But the last point that I wanted to talk about is this, arriving at the voice. Now, this has pretty much been a practice-based class, right? So I say certain things, you write. I float certain concepts, you problematize those concepts. But there is also a danger that even though there are so many different opinions that we have collected here, there's also a danger of perhaps writing in the same way. So we may end up writing in the same way, even our differences, right? And because it is creative nonfiction and not an essay writing workshop, so it is very important that we write our narratives in our own voice. Some of us might have a more jovial aspect or tint to storytelling. So we might be more humorous, we might make fun of ourselves, we might be paradoxical, we might be parodying ourselves also. And some of us might take a more solemn, sincere, grounded, measured approach, right? Now this also emerges from, partially at least, it emerges from how we are feeling and how we are connecting with the spaces that we have created. So if it's a playful space that we have created, which combines both the country and the city, right? I might adopt a kind of ironic narration, right? That Gen Z kind of attitude. Or I might forsake irony and actually apprehend the space that I have created as what it is. I be objective reporter. I do not ironize anything. I do not make fun of anything. So I can go completely sincere. I can go in some ways playful. And if I am feeling that these two distinctive places, or the idea of the country and the city, they should have existed separately. If I do believe that, if I come from that position, then I may actually adopt a more mournful, nostalgic tone. I say that in the middle ground that you are suggesting, now neither the city nor the country exists, right? So I may take a tone which is that of a lament for certain older values, certain older stereotypes, certain older traditions, right? Or by acknowledging that this middle space exists, I may take a more celebratory tone, that we no longer have to be chained to the older divisions. We can actually devise our own new space and invest them with whatever ideas, values we want to, right? So the voice could be tragic, the voice could be hopeful, the voice could be dull and dry, right? Though I would discourage you from adopting that voice. The voice could be encyclopedic, which is like to show off that यहाँ पर ये है, show off facts and figures. The voice could be extremely immersive. You can actually just take a look at one aspect of the place that you have chosen. You can write a long paragraph just on Dior, that what it evokes inside of you, or just on the livestock. So you can be as detailed as you want to. You can be descriptive. You can be interrogative. You can interrogate these descriptions or the ideas. You can be conformist. You can say, I want as a city dweller, I want to retreat to the country because the country is different from the city, because the country time moves slow, because the country there are innocent people, the country there are innocent animals, even though those animals may come and bite you, but still in the end they are innocent, So you can take these ideological positions while you are writing. You can portray the city as the bad city where bad things happen, where innocence is lost, right? So you have these multiple avenues to do it. But when you do it, and just like we have seen from his points, her point, and your point, right? There we have arrived at certain complexities, right? So there is peace and longing on one hand, trying to occupy one space, trying to be compatible with each other, yet bringing perhaps certain conflicts, right? There is the idea of your middle town space, that it is neither urban nor rural. How do we make sense of it? Instead of asking this question, how do we make sense of it? Why do you need to make sense of it? Right? So why can't we just accept it as a process and dwell there? Right? Or the very fact that we are given two choices, either to be stereotypical in our descriptions or be revolutionary in our description, to kind of dispel our stereotypes. And there we had this example of an English-speaking villager who just didn't go back to Bangalore, after the pandemic. So there are multiple scenarios that you can create. The narration will be in the first person because it's creative non-fiction, and it could be in the third person also, but for this time let it be in the first person. It's going to be autobiographical, which is to say that it's going to emerge from you, right? So it's your story, it's not someone else's story. And as your story, you have to take accountability for it as well, right? My email ID is very simple. It's vatsamihir@gmail.com. Just reverse the name and you will have my email ID. Please don't write 10,000 words, right? So while I'll encourage you to write it in your free time, but if you want to share what you have written, and if you would like certain inputs or some suggestions, then write around 500 to 1,500, at max 2,000 words, and feel free to send it to me. Identify yourself as a workshop participant. Say that I was here at Reliance University and that's how you met me, that's how you got my email, and I will take time, but I will reply. Okay. So now we come to the close of the workshop. I hope you had good time and you will go back after learning certain things, hopefully. Thank you all for coming.
So this is a kind of a token from our behalf. So it has something inside. It has a painting inside. Yeah, thanks.